Hey, what's up, guys? I'm BTC. Long live the Deathball. I know a lot of people really didn't like the tank meta, and it seemed like we were about to get away from it. But some recent changes looks like everyone might get dragged right back in. There are a couple major things that have changed recently that are going to have a lot of influence on whether the Tank Meta Deathball comes back in full force. So just in case you don't know what they changed, let me go over them real quick. So first thing is they added a new character, Orisa. She is a tank, has incredible amounts of survivability. She has a barrier. The Fortify reduces all incoming damage by 50%. It also makes her immune to stun, to slow, to all sorts of crowd control effects. On top of that, she puts out a pretty good amount of damage and has a ton of ammo, so she can just keep shooting at the enemy barriers like for a very long time and take them down pretty quickly. On top of that, her ultimate, Supercharger, makes her entire team do a crazy amount of damage, and basically, she is just a very powerful tank character with a lot of utility, a lot of sustain, and can pump out a lot of damage as well. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Lucio just got some pretty major changes, and while it makes him less effective in things like dive comp, it makes him incredibly powerful in a Deathball tank meta. So let me run through his changes. The Sonic Amplifier, his left click projectile speed increased from 40 to 50. Alternate fire now considers vertical orientation when knocking targets back. That basically means it's easier to knock people off of the edge. His crossfade, the song's area effect radius decreased from 30 meters down to 10 meters. I know it seems like a huge amount, and it is, but it's actually not as bad as you think. A temporary in-game visual has been added to illustrate this radius. Actually, that's a really good thing. I hope they kind of keep it. Actually, I would like to see them add it for other stuff as well, like Symmetra's shield generator. Being able to see like the area of effect of that would be pretty awesome. So the heal song, healing per second, has increased by 50%. Also applies to Lucio's Amp It Up ability. The sound barrier radius decreased from 30 meters to 20 meters. And the wall ride, movement speed increased by 30% when wall riding. And he also gets a quick little burst of speed when leaping off a wall. So looking at that, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? There are some buffs here, and there's also some nerfs. I know some people are saying that this is a flat nerf, but to be blunt, those people have no idea what they're talking about. They're just not looking at the big picture. Determining if this is an overall buff or a nerf is going to be based on what kind of a player you're looking at. For example, a casual player who is in a solo queue on a relatively disorganized team is likely looking at this as a nerf. For a high skill or a pro player who's on an organized team, this is going to be a buff. The reason is quite simple. In order for Lucio to be effective now, he has to be pretty close to his team. But again, contrary to what some might say, the new aura distance isn't actually as small as it seems. An organized team will stay in this range, but a team of random people who solo queued probably won't. You also have to look at what kind of tactic is the team using. On the competitive ladder, there isn't any one specific tactic. Also, there's a lot of off-meta picks. And as I said, it's usually disorganized with just a bunch of people kind of doing whatever they want to do. For the pro level, it's a different story. There are a couple different tactics that they can use. Right now, one of the more popular tactics is known as the dive comp. This type of lineup usually has several flanking characters who are approaching from different angles and are relatively spread out. In this case, Lucio is not going to be an amazing pick. He's still not completely terrible, but he's not nearly as useful as he was before due to the reduced range of his auras. However, there is another comp that was used quite a bit in the tank meta, which is known as the Deathball. This is when your entire team groups up and moves very quickly in order to overwhelm the enemy. The standard lineup for this was usually a Reinhardt, Zarya, Roadhog, Soldier 76, Ana, and of course, Lucio. This was probably the most powerful lineup ever used in Overwatch, as it had a very high amount of damage and survivability. Older changes to the game reduced Lucio's healing and the effect of Ana's biotic grenade. That made this lineup slightly worse, and it gave the opportunity for other tactics to be used, like the dive comp. However, the recent changes to Lucio and the addition of Orisa to the game, it seems like the Tank Meta Deathball has a really good chance of returning. A new Tank Meta lineup with Reinhardt, Orisa, Zarya, Soldier 76, Ana, and Lucio would be absolutely insanely powerful. The addition of Orisa allows for multiple barrier shields in addition to her already ridiculous survivability. She also has a strong left click for quickly dealing with the enemy barriers. In addition to all that, her ultimate, the Supercharger, will now allow the Death Ball to do even more damage than it ever did before. But that's not where it ends. The changes to Lucio now make him even stronger in that Death Ball situation. Previously, like I said, they had nerfed Lucio's healing, but it just now got a huge 50% buff. Combined with Ana's biotic grenade, Lucio's Amp It Up will now bring his entire team to full in seconds, even when the team is full of tanks. And of course, adding to that the speed boost potential of quickly getting past choke points and up onto high ground makes this whole lineup even stronger. Now, while this Death Ball strategy will be most effective in the pro scene at the higher ranks of play, I think it's definitely possible that even the casual player can use it somewhat effectively. I'm not saying it's going to work all the time, but it's not a super complicated strategy. Even a group of random people who solo queue should be able to get this to work at least half the time. In regard to the Lucio, those changes may be worse in some situations, but overall it's going to allow for some extremely powerful Death Ball comps for both the pro and even some of the casual players. A lot of times the casual players try to emulate what they see being done at the pro level. And just because the casual player doesn't play as well as the pro, it doesn't mean that the strategy won't still work, at least in some part. Arguably, you could say that the casual team that manages to use the Death Ball strategy, even partially effective, is going to have a huge advantage over their opponents. The reason being, at the pro level, the enemy team is going to know that the Death Ball is coming, and they're going to prepare for it and try to counter it. But in the casual competitive ladder, that just doesn't happen. And the team that's using the Death Ball will just run right over their enemies like a freight train. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't like the tank meta, but don't shoot the messenger. I'm just pointing out what seems to be a pretty likely situation. But let me know what you guys think. Leave your feedback in the comment section down below, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the new videos. Thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button, share it with your friends. Remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.